Hey all, so today we're going to talk plagiarism. So your first essay is coming up, and this is a really important lecture for you to kind of take some notes on and think about as you start putting together that rough draft. So plagiarism, a definition that I got from Merriam-Webster online, which I cited, it defines it as to steal or pass off the ideas or words of another's one's own. So you can plagiarize someone if you take their ideas word for word, but you can also plagiarize if you're just using their ideas and pretending they're your own, right? So if you're tutoring at the tutoring center and your tutor suggests, hey, you could use this as your theme. If you use that as your theme and not your own ideas, that is also plagiarism. The second bullet point reads to use another's production without crediting the source, right? So we went over MLA citation. So if you're not using an in-text citation and then also listing the work on your works cited page, that is also plagiarism. To commit literary theft, right? So to steal from someone else's written work. To present as new and original an idea or product derived from an existing source, right? Again, so taking someone else's ideas or pieces of writing and passing them off as your own. So plagiarism.org is a really good resource. We're going to talk about evidence a little bit later on. .org sites are always a little bit better to look at than just .coms. So they write a couple other things that I'd like you to kind of think about as we go forward. So plagiarism can be turning in someone else's work as your own, right? Like using their work, not citing it correctly or not citing it at all. It can be copying words or ideas without giving credit. I see this a lot when people are analyzing a story. They go to lit charts or Sparks Notes and they copy ideas from there and pass it off as their own. Failing to put a quotation in quotation marks, that's important to do. Giving incorrect information about the source of a quotation. So that's why we really want to make sure for our in-text citations we have the last name and the page number, and for our works cited page you want to use all the information available to you like we talked about. It says changing words but copying the sentence structure of a source without giving credit, so that's pretty specific. Copying so many words or ideas from a source that it makes up the majority of your work, whether you give credit or not. Right? So this is actually really important, and I actually see this quite commonly in my classes. When you are writing a paper, you want the bulk of it to be in your own words, right? And a little bit later on, we talk about sort of quote length. But if you remember back to when we talked about body paragraphs, you want your quotes to be 1 to 2 sentence or lines of text, right? And then you want to spend 3 to 4 sentences or 2 to 3 sentences kind of explaining that quote and showing how it connects to the topic sentence. So even if in your essay you cite where the source came from, you have it on your works cited page, it's a source that I gave to you and that you're able to use. If it makes up too much of your paper, you are plagiarizing, right? So you want to make sure that, again, you're using 1 to 2 lines of text from another source, and then the bulk of the essay is going to be in your words, and the bulk of that body paragraph is going to be explaining that. It's also plagiarism to use previous work. So something you turned in high school, you cannot turn in again for me. So when we turn in essays in this class, we submit it to turnitin.com. And so Turnitin kind of takes your essay and it kind of passes it through this huge database of all other essays that have been on Turnitin. It passes it through library databases and Google and all of that to look for plagiarism, essentially. So it can find entire segments of your essay that are copied. It can kind of tell when you just change key phrases, right? When you pull out a sentence and change some phrases. When you kind of morph together various sources, or when you cite inaccurate source information. I can always request a copy of the source that you're using. So if you use your friend's paper from high school, I'm able to access that paper and see exactly how you plagiarized. When you do submit to turn it in, you are able to see a similarity score. You want to check that and see what that looks like. But if you're following the rules that we've talked about for body paragraphs and following these rules about plagiarism, you should be fine. So a couple things you want to remember to do, right? And these are all kind of things that you want to jot down on your notepad right now. Adding a works cited page at the end of that paper, right? Remember, it should be on its own piece of paper. It's titled works cited, and they have to be cited correctly. Cite everything you get from another source unless it's common knowledge, right? So if you are writing your essay about a public figure like Gordon Ramsay, and it's common knowledge that he can be a jerk to people, you can use that without citing it, right? But if you're going to bring up when and where he was born, you need to cite that information. And again, please use in-text citations. So this slide kind of talks about what we kind of discussed before, and also what we discussed for body paragraph format. So your quotes should be 1 to 2 lines, period, right? So we're not going to be using block quotes in this class. Our papers aren't long enough. And also, I really want you to be looking at your quotes and making sure that each piece that you're using is essential information to get your point across, right? Before, we kind of talked about how when you don't need all the stuff surrounding the pieces of information in the quote, you can take stuff out, you can add some stuff in if you put it in brackets. So you want to boil those ideas to 1 to 2 lines, and then spend 2 to 3 sentences explaining how that connects to your topic sentence, right? And this is the commentary. This is the bulk of your essay. Again, if your quotes are too long or you use too many quotes from your sources, your similarity score will be too big. You only want to use the part of the quote that you need, right? On my syllabus, I also talk about what you're allowed as far as similarity score. It should be between 20 and 25%. All right, that means that less than 1/4 of your essay is other people's words. If your score is too large, it is plagiarism. It will result in a 0, right, as I state on my syllabus. So that magic number is 35%, right? Anything above 35% and you will receive a 0. You can't rewrite. And if you do that a second time, I do have to report you. So just a couple of reminders. When we talked about intro paragraphs, we talked about how you can use a quote in your hook. You want to make sure that you cite any quotes or statistics that you use in your quote, in your hook. Make sure that you're kind of integrating who said it, right? And again, you can receive a 0 for your work. I do not want that to happen. I would like to make it through a whole semester where I don't give anyone a 0, but it's really, really important that you learn this skill. Not just because it helps you in your writing, but if you do move on to a university, sometimes the first offense results in being reported and bigger things kind of happening to you. If you have any questions or you would like some more resources, I'd be more than happy to give them to you. Just let me know. Shoot me an email.